It's my honor to nominate Frank and Karen Castella for the Percheron Hall of Fame. Dedicated members of the Percheron Horse Association of America since 1980, they became lifetime members in 1986. Frank and Karen brought registered Percherons back to Dutchess County, New York in the 1970s when Percherons were all but unheard of in the local area. Today, Frank and Karen are well known throughout the Northeast for their unwavering professional promotion of the breed. When Frank was a young man, he found his way into the hands of Johnny and Joe Kriz of Bethany, Connecticut. He spent many hours at the Kriz farm, and in the fall of 1976, he and Karen came across a weanling Percheron filly that immediately stole their hearts. Her dam had been bred by the University of Connecticut and somehow ended up in the possession of Johnny Kriz. At the time, the Castellas were financially unable to purchase the filly, but Johnny did not care. He put the filly in his trailer and sent them on their way home, telling them that they could pay when they were able. Lacking any proper accommodations for a horse, Frank and Karen reluctantly brought the filly home. They cleared some property, put up fencing, and even happened to build a barn. Castle's Felina became the foundation for their Percheron obsession and went on to raise 3 foals for them. Their intense passion for the breed led them to become founding members of the Hudson Valley Draft Horse Association in 1981, which is still going strong today in its 37th year. In the mid-'80s, they began competing and performing exhibitions with their horses, promoting Percherons at events such as the Belmont Horse Fair at the Belmont Park in front of 40,000 plus people over the 8-day festival. It was the 1986 Hudson Valley Draft Horse Association Fall Harvest Festival where Karen first offered to set up a booth to promote Percherons on behalf of the Percheron Horse Association of America. The booth, which she occupied at multiple events over the next several years, sold hundreds of dollars worth of Percheron Association merchandise. Frank and Karen raised their 4 children around Percherons, and today their grandchildren are the 3rd generation of association members and registered Percheron owners. Frank served as volunteer superintendent of the Dutchess County Fair Draft Horse Show in Rhinebeck, New York, for over 35 years. Of course, he could not have done all of the work to prepare for the fair without his wife by his side, ordering ribbons, trophies, and getting the prize list in order. With his outgoing demeanor, Frank has put the lines of his horses in the hands of many people, young and old, that were looking for an opportunity to work with the draft horses. Frank has operated Castle Carriage for many years, providing his horses for weddings, parades, and to even give wagon rides. The Castella's Percherons have graced the grounds at West Point Stewart Air Force Base and the ABC Thanksgiving Day Parade in Philadelphia. When their daughter campaigned to bring the 2014 World Percheron Congress to Massachusetts, their support never wavered. Karen purchased rolling racks and quickly made Frank forfeit his garage for storage of all of the Congress merchandise. For 3 years, they warehoused it, processed and fulfilled orders, hauled it in their equipment trailer from New York to Massachusetts and back on several occasions for the 2012 and 2013 Equine Affair, the Big E Draft Horse Show, and even lugged it to Columbus, Ohio for the 2014 Equine Affair. Their support didn't end with the merchandise, though. Frank wanted to give the World Percheron Congress a platform in which to honor veterans during the opening ceremonies. He spent countless hours coordinating with many volunteers, acquiring parts from near and far, very far, even Alaska to be exact, in order to build the Warrior Wagon and to have it ready to kick off the 2014 Congress. To this day, Frank continues to utilize his Percheron geldings to honor veterans with this iconic vehicle at several events throughout the year. You've seen their horses on the cover of the Percheron News, in the Percheron calendar, and on the Draft Horse Journal pocket calendar. Their Percherons have been much more than just horses to them. They're truly family. Frank and Karen Castella remain unwavering advocates of presenting the Percheron horse to the public in every way possible and at every opportunity imagined. Never once has this inspiring couple asked for recognition in doing so. The very word Percheron, or horse for that matter, means just one thing: weekends in the country, a visit to Frank and Karen's, and a bag of apples for the boys. There is nothing more gratifying and exhilarating than walking up to the drive with the apples and having a majestic 1-ton animal recognize you and run at you at top speed to get his treat. I can only liken these beings to the ocean, powerful, quiet, gentle, and deeper than we may ever know. Frank and Karen are charmingly nonchalant with their very vast knowledge of their animals, and patient with our questions and wonderment as we've grown closer to them over the years. We've witnessed the hard work and dedication to their horses with humbling awe. There is a stately pride that runs through their lives, from the Percheron stickers on their cars to the trophy room at their farm, full of memories and mementos and literally covered in ribbons. The equestrian pursuit is, like us, an acquired member of the Castella family, and we are grateful to have them in our lives. All our love and congratulations on an honor well deserved. I've been enamored with horses for my entire life, and by Percherons only because of Frank and Karen Castella. I have vivid memories hearing the wagon go by from my grandmother's porch, the snorts of the horses, the wagon rattling and bumping along. I'd shout into the house and take flight across the yard to stand on the stone wall and peer around the field, watching the team and hoping they'd come round again and scoop me up with them. Riding in the cart after a time became driving the cart. One of my favorite summer evening activities became driving to Uncle Frank's after dinner, with the heat of the day fading to blue fields, transpiring mist. Kimmy taught me how to drive Dick and Diesel, and I, not 5 feet nor 100 pounds, guided their powerful, joyful movements through that big old field, making sure they could hear me over all of the rattling and bumping that the wagon produced, and the measured thunder of their hoofs. We'd return as the darkness fell to the barn, full of light and love. Hot steaming horses and my Castella family, all hands on deck to get everyone cleaned up and settled in for the night. I had been riding over fences for several years prior, but I have never felt comfortable in the show ring until I started driving the Percherons. I drove for the Castellas in the junior driver division at several local fairs and shows, winning ribbons in the junior and ladies' cart with Dick and May. These powerful, graceful animals were so clearly the center of attention to me. I was just simply helping them shine. The Castellas were the horse family I so much needed as a little girl. They embraced me, taught me, and took me on a journey I would have never had without them. There is something about being a small little girl, encouraged to feel comfortable around such big animals that are so much stronger than she. She inevitably begins to realize that she, too, must be strong. No words can describe how kind-hearted and caring Frank is. He will always go out of his way to help someone else, no matter how much of a hassle it is. Frank was kind enough to allow me to come and work with his Percherons and to teach me how to drive a horse and carriage. Driving horses and carriages was an amazing experience for me that would not have been possible without the opportunity Frank had offered me. It meant the world to me and was one of the coolest experiences in my life. I own my own horse now and ride all of the time. Tacking up with the saddle and bridle is a 5-minute process. No big deal, but having to put on all of the harness for driving is a much longer process, along with setting up the cart and driving around. Frank spent his time with me after a long day of working in his printing business, when he could have been enjoying some downtime, probably doing something else. But of course, instead, Frank would choose making a little girl's day amazing over the possibility of some downtime. I'm so grateful for the experience Frank has offered me, and I love getting to see him and being around the Percherons. Frank is a generous man who loves and cares for his horses like no other farmer I know. I look up to Frank as a role model, and I am inspired by all of the amazing things Frank has done in his life. I had never handled a draft horse before I met Frank Castella Sr. He introduced me to each of his horses, speaking lovingly as if each one was a cherished grandchild. Even if they had a devilish streak, they were always spoken of with great affection. When remembering horses who came before, he chokes and tears up. No matter how much time has passed since their death, he still misses them. They are all still on the farm, lining the drive and hill around the house. He will respect and love them forever. You can hear the reverence he has for these amazing horses in his voice. You can't help but be drawn into the great love that he has for them. When we were at an event with his team, many people are intimidated by such large horses. Frank draws them in with the history of the breed and a funny story about something the horses will do to help them see that these horses are sentient individuals. He wants them to love them as much as he does, not fear such a noble and loyal breed. I also love sharing the horses, these characters whom I consider such great friends, with people who may not have grown up around them and may be fearful. I've learned so much about working around Percherons, all from just simply visiting Frank and Karen's farm or helping out at events in which the horses are featured. The other people that help at events are a combination of both family and friends. To see 3 generations of Frank's family working together and supporting the horses is an aspirational and inspirational act. The other helpers are either fellow draft horse people or those who came to love them through Frank, just like me. I have had the honor of volunteering with the Warrior Wagon on several occasions. I do it to honor the memory of my father, a Marine who served in the Korean War. I also do it for Frank, whose sincere dedication and determination to show respect and appreciation to all of the veterans who have served our country is inspiring and admirable. Every single veteran I have met has touched my heart. Hearing their stories and watching their faces as they see the crowds applauding them and thanking them for their service. In some cases, this would be the first ever time that they've been shown such love and appreciation. There's always a moment after each veteran has received their medal that they are applauded as one. It's a magical moment. I feel it every time. The crowd, the veterans, and the volunteers come together to be one person, together in this moment of love and respect. I can see it in the eyes of those around. My love of horses, at least in part, came from the Castellas. I remember being young and my mom taking me to Stacy's farm to see the miniature horse Nelson, who I loved dearly. Frank continued to foster that love. When I got a little bit older, my dad started taking me to help Frank with the horses. My favorite was always helping get the horses ready. Frank became like a grandpa figure, sitting and teaching me how to get the Percherons ready for an event, showing me how to shine their feet, where and how to brush, all the basics a girl with a horse obsession is dying to know. Then I would go with Frank and my dad to the carriage rides and get to tell all of the people how friendly these gentle giants really were. I was much tinier than I am now, but because Frank had taught me how to act around the horses remained big gentle giants who just wanted love and carrots, lots and lots of carrots. I was never afraid of them because Frank showed me that I had nothing to be afraid of. I kept helping Frank with the horses. Once I was old enough to start driving carriages, Frank started teaching me. I will admit I am not the easiest pupil to teach, but Frank had so much patience, and the horses we used, Richard and May, were so good, and they didn't mind a novice behind the lines. We would take the horses all around the property, and he would teach me how to talk to them, and show me how to keep my hands quieter even when they pulled. The one time they spooked, it was because we had snapped a tree branch, and I remember everything being all right, with Frank sitting next to me, helping me stay calm, and showing me how to gather myself back up to make sure I kept control. Frank even let me show with him and his horses in the local Dutchess County Fair, letting me drive a cart in the youth classes. Even though I didn't do as well as I had hoped, Frank was still super proud of me, and honestly, that is better than any first place ribbon in the world. Frank introduced me to the most beautiful animals in the world. They helped cultivate my knowledge of these gentle, beautiful giants. When Frank started up with the warrior wagon, I was so happy to help out, even if it was just doing what I knew best, brushing the horses and getting them to look their prettiest so they could make everyone proud. With the warrior wagon, Frank had managed to combine a love of horse with the love of our country. Frank is like a grandfather to me. He has always been this way throughout my life, and I have learned so much from him. And every time I come back home, I know I am not only welcome to help with the horses again, but that I will learn even more along the way. I've never seen someone so in tune with the horses. It's like they speak their own little language. But Frank is always willing to translate and teach anyone who wants to know about the horses that he loves. I'm so glad I am one of those people. My name is Joe Tagliamonte, and I met Frank Castella through a classified ad. Frank was selling some square bales of hay. He had asked, "What kind of horse do you own?" I stuck my chest out and proudly told Frank what kind of horse I had owned. You would have thought that I had cussed in a church by the way he looked at me. "Oh, you have one of those brown draft horses." Frank told me to come into the barn and let me show you to the dark side. I received the ultimate tour of all of the horses and all of the carriages and even the hitch wagon. Don't forget all of the stories that went along with them. I have to say, after that evening, I was hooked and wanted to learn more about Percherons. A meaningful friendship was born that evening. Frank took me under his wing and taught me a lot of things about driving that I was longing to learn. Not only Frank, but his wonderful wife Karen accepted me and my family into their home and showed us all of the wonderful things that they had done with these majestic horses. Frank has also influenced my children to be involved with Percherons. My daughter and I had the pleasure of spending time with Frank honoring veterans at the 2014 World Percheron Congress in Massachusetts. I have to say that the experience is very moving. It didn't matter how many times we hooked up to that warrior wagon. Once those veterans were aboard and we were honoring their service, there wasn't a dry eye in the crowd. Frank and Karen Castella, thank you from the bottom of my heart and my family's hearts for introducing me to the Percheron horse. I love you very much, and I still own that brown horse, but I now also own a Percheron. I am Master Sergeant James Godovich. I am a career United States Marine who has served in an active duty status for over 17 years. I was at recruit training when the towers fell in 2001. I specialize in signals intelligence and have been deployed 5 times, 4 of which in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. I have done work in support of both special operations and general purpose forces, and have works in the Pacific Theater, Middle East, and am currently writing this letter from a NATO exercise in Norway. I have hung my hat in countless countries, and have lived steps away from both oceans which flank our great country. The military has had a great effect on who I am as a person. In truth, though, when I need to remember who I am, I still identify as a farm kid from upstate New York. My childhood was spent on beef farms. I was blessed to be able to experience all aspects of farm life under the tutelage of my father, from whom I learned foundational life lessons that I am still able to apply to situations that I live daily. Near the time I reached my teenage years, full of wandering energy, I was introduced to Frank Castella. It was at the Dutchess County Fair that I was given the opportunity to help the Harmon Castella team. My first experience with draft horses, or horses in general, was the instruction to hold an ornery filly waiting to be shown in a halter class. She would ultimately rear up, clobber my shoulder, and take off with her lead shank blowing in the wind. I would spend years as a mainstay at the Castella house, spending most of my free weekends there, perpetually learning both horsemanship and life lessons at an equal rate. I grew like a weed, although Karen was equally present in my time spent at the farm. This is about Frank. Frank is an infectious man. In my life growing up, from fitting, training, and showing beef cattle, becoming a third member of a team of oxen, and working with the Percherons, I learned that animals are a better judge of character than any man. Frank epitomizes what every horseman wants to be, and what every horse wants from their handler. Frank connects with his giants. It happens with a nudge from his soft voice that I have seen comfort them through situations that would terrify other animals, such as maneuvering near hissing and booming steam trains and in dense crowds. I have also seen that soft voice incite so much adrenaline and pride alike into these great beasts that it almost seems to reach into their very heritage as war horses moving triumphantly out of battle. I am blissfully unaware of what Frank saw in me to put up with me so many years ago, or why he would have allowed me to be around him as much as he did. I am purely glad that I have been able to become the man that I am, the father that I am, and the horseman that I am, with the direct influence of Frank Castella. In your life, many people come and go, but there are some that truly touch your heart. I have two people that have deeply impacted my life and will forever touch my heart, and those people would be Frank and Karen Castella. My name is Jim Lieberman, and I am a firefighter going on 34 years. I met Frank and Karen in the late 1980s through my then-girlfriend, future wife. My knowledge of horses back then was I knew they came in different sizes and colors. I knew what a racehorse looked like and what a Clydesdale was. I liked beer. But other than that, I was pretty clueless. The first time I went to the farm to meet the horses, I was amazed. I'm 6'4" and to have a horse that size looking down at me was very daunting. Magnificent animals with their beautiful black coats and the way they handled themselves and their personalities was, well, inspiring. When you meet Frank and Karen, you instantly feel like you belong. Their love of their family and their horses and the way they make you feel at home on their farm. I love to go to all of the horse shows on the weekends, to fairs all over the East Coast with them. The amount of work that was involved going to a show was, well, amazing. To see everybody scrambling to get the horses groomed and all of the girls standing on the benches braiding the horses' manes and tails. The lugging of wagons, carts, cleaning, and putting the beautiful patent leather harnesses on the horses as the sun was just coming up. The kids getting all dressed up and showing in their classes, hitching the 6-horse hitch and breaking it down to a 4-horse, then unicorn, and finally a team. Every weekend I picked up more knowledge, and with the very patient Frank explaining to me about everything, lead teams and swing teams and wheel horses. As a firefighter, we are constantly trained on working as a team. You are only as strong as the weakest link, and there is no I in the word team, etc., etc. But what was interesting to me is I would go to all of these horse shows, and everybody would work together. Even if it was a person you were competing against. It was not uncommon to see Castellas helping other teams get hitched, or braiding their horses, or lending them equipment. And at the end of a long day and everything was cleaned and packed away, everybody would pull up a bale of hay and have a beer, and the stories and the laughter would begin. When I got married in Poughkeepsie, Frank was able to find a Concord stagecoach that we rented and pulled with a 4-horse hitch through the streets of Poughkeepsie that was big enough for my whole wedding party to ride on and our parents to ride in. We even had to stop halfway to the reception to get more beer. It was the highlight of the day, and I have Frank and Karen to thank for that. I became a father to a beautiful girl, Erin, and Frank and Karen became her third set of grandparents. Karen made sure her first rocking horse was a black Percheron. I learned a lot about being a good dad from Frank. His patience when dealing with people, and the way he goes out of his way to answer a question or to show you how to do something. Unfortunately, life took us down 2 different paths for a long time, which is something I still regret. Just as Frank has taught me many lessons, life has taught me that people who truly matter the most will always find their way back into your life. I'm so grateful that this is true. Frank and Karen were there for me after my divorce, and it was as if no time had passed. Frank reached out to me and said he knew how much I enjoyed working with the horses, and if I would be interested in doing some weddings with him. Well, I'm proud to say that over the last 13 years or so, we have done many weddings, wagon rides, and events together. He got me involved in his Warrior Wagon project, and after hundreds of hours of work, we have a beautiful wagon that we pay tribute to our dedicated veterans from all branches of service. It is truly inspiring to see the smiles on all of these men and women's faces, wearing the medal Frank gives to them, thanking them for their service, and riding on the wagon led by these 2 magnificent Percherons. This had brought tears to our eyes and has made all of the work and effort we put into this project worthwhile. Every time I do something with Frank, it's an adventure, whether working on the farm, helping at the print shop, or simply running down to get something from the Amish. I wouldn't trade these times I have had with the Castellas for anything. The love that Karen and Frank have for the horses and their family is truly inspiring. I am very grateful to have them in my life, a second mother, father, a mentor, but most of all, my best friends. Thank you for letting me be a part of your family, and congratulations, well deserved.
In the spring of 2001, I was 17 years old and struggling to find my way when I was struck with the life-altering tragedy of losing my father to suicide. I was lost and headed down a dark road when, through a mutual family friend, Lenny Miller, I was introduced to the Castella family. Every summer, my father and I would help Lenny with his horses at the fair. The summer of my father's death, I returned to help. While Lenny welcomed me with open arms, it was just not the same. I was just not the same. Somehow, I think Frank and in turn Karen and the entire Castella family sensed I needed something. Needed them. Helping the Castellas out that year at the Dutchess County Fair turned into showing in hand at the fair. That turned into an invite to the farm to learn more. I still remember that day, learning about each piece of harness and being given a tour around the barn. Next came an opportunity to ride in the cart around the field. I so vividly remember this time, with the sun setting and a slight summer breeze, feeling at peace, even if just for a moment. With that ride came an opportunity to learn to drive. A few short lessons later, and an invite to join the family at the Goshen Fair. This time, me, would be showing in junior cart under Kin's tutelage. Next up came an opportunity to tag along at the Big E. Although I had been showing in Hunters since I was little, this was the biggest show I had ever attended. I remember the preparation and the packing. I remember arriving and how everyone had a job to do. Everyone was important. We were a team. More than that, we were made to feel like a family. Long, exciting days led to long, exhausting nights sleeping in the back of a trailer. Rolling out the foldable mattress in the trailer that night, I knew everything was going to be all right. I knew I was going to be all right because there were people in this world that no questions asked a struggling teenager into their family and showed her that there was hope. The Castella's family's influence reaches so much more than introducing so many to the world of Percherons. They truly inspire everyone they meet to be better humans.